Hey all, it's Natalie for A Cherry on Top today, and it's Technique Tuesday, and this month our focus is on watercolors. I'm using these Brutus Monroe aqua pigments to create a scrapbook background. I have some textured white cardstock, and I have covered it in clear gesso. I have these two photos, and I'm kind of using my son's shirt in that one as the inspiration. I'm using an all-in-create stencil. You can use any stencils that you want. The only thing I would say is if you're using a straight edge stencil, just be careful as you stamp it down onto your background, not to get that straight edge unless that's the look you're going for. That's why I like this die cut stencil. So I'm using this on top of my glass mat, and I'm dripping the pigments, the watercolor pigments, on top of the stencil, just on a portion of it. And then I'm just using a little bit of water and making it spread around and mix around. And when I picked it up, you could see that one side was even more vibrant than the other side. And I just grabbed a paper towel and I kind of just stamped it nicely on top. So it's the image, but a little bit distorted, a little bit watercolory, which is exactly the look that I was going for. So I'm going to dip it back into the watercolor that is on the mat a couple more times. I'm going to put it in a different position and use a different part of the stencil. And I'm just going to use the same technique all over the page. I'm stamping it all over. Like I said, I have clear gesso on here, so I'm able to add as much liquid as I want to the background, and it's not going to distort my paper. It's not going to run through. The paper allows me a little bit of room to kind of wiggle the paint around a little bit and not, it doesn't soak it all in immediately. So I'm leaving a few white spaces, but moving the stencil around in a different direction, using first and second generation stamping, which is just, less watercolor or more watercolor. But we're about done. I'm leaving a bigger space there in the bottom because that's where my photos are going to cover it up. So I'm just softening a few of the edges. I'm adding that watercolor that was still on my mat and just giving a few more saturated areas of only color, covering up some of the ends of the stencil where I stopped the color and the stamping. And I will keep that puddle of color on my mat. So when everything was mostly dry, now I'm going in and doing a few splatters. I wanted all of the watercolor stamping to be mostly dry so that the splatters do not just soak into the puddles of watercolor. Now I'm going in and creating a little bit with the purple as well. And I'm actually going to add some black too. So I just used my distress ink and made it into a watercolor to add black splatter because the background of his shirt was black, and that's going to be my accent color on the layout. So I let that completely dry. And I'm making sure that my watercolors are really closed tight. And I'm very happy with how that looks. It looks like a lovely distressed background of beautiful, you can tell it's like a floral or foliage, but it's not very distinct. So I pulled out this bow bunny paper. It's actually still in the store, but it is an older collection. But it kind of reminded me of his shirt as well, but the opposite, the black foliage on a blue background. So I decided to cut that word, my title wording out. It's going to say all this and brains too, because it's supposed to be like all this, like they look good, but they have brains too. I decided to back my watercolor background on some black cardstock and just let a little bit peek out on one side. So that's what you see me doing here. I just chopped off a couple of the top and the side, and then I will use my sewing machine to add some contrast stitching in black and white onto both of the cardstocks. So I did that off screen. Really messy stitching kind of goes along with the messy distress background. I also inked up the edges of my cut file with some black, that same black distress ink that you saw earlier, to help it pop off the page more. And then I'm using, for the rest of my title, just some black foam thickers. So I also used the stitching and sewed around the photo. So this is a pretty simple layout, even though there's a lot going on. It's really just some watercolors on the background and a title. I will add a few embellishment pieces, but not many. So I thought that adding the stitching or mimicking the stitching on the photos that I put around the edges would be an added interest detail that wouldn't be too much to go along with all of the watercolor that we have going and my really big title, because I feel like that's where the focus should be and I didn't want to take away from it. So just adding a few subtle details and repeating elements is a good way to bring cohesion to your layout without adding too much to it. So I'm loving the way that looks. These are some older embellishments. They came from a chipboard sticker sheet from Paige Evans. I can look really quick to see which one that is in case you still have it in your stash. I'm sure it's off of the store because it was so good. Oh no, where is it? It is the Wonders collection because it had purple in it. And I was going to add other colors, but it ended up just working out to just keep the blues and purples going on, and I didn't want to take away from that, so I went with that. I did decide to add in some more thread, and again, that goes along with the stitching thing that I just mentioned. It's mimicking the thread from the stitching and adding it behind the embellishment. I did a nice little visual triangle, and it's messy, so it is mimicking the distressed nature of the layout, and it adds interest just a little bit and cohesion to the page, but not any more embellishment. I just added a couple word stickers and I'm going to put my date stamp on and we're going to call it done. I hope that you are inspired by this technique of watercolor stencil stamping. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and you can see more videos like this on my channel, and I hope you enjoyed this. The products should be linked on the gallery for my still photos at acherryontop.com. Thanks for watching, y'all. Bye.